In Iran, celebrations in the street and a hero's welcome for the Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. This week's framework nuclear agreement between America and Iran has been hailed as the peace won, with supporters confident a deadly cycle of escalation has been broken. Trita Parsi is the president of the National Iranian-American Council and a Middle East expert.
I think this is absolutely historic and quite amazing. I mean, remember, for so long, there's been people all over the place who said that the Iranians and the United States would never be able to come to an agreement on essentially anything. Some even said that the other side wouldn't even agree to negotiate because of ideological reasons. Now, without a doubt, there are elements who have ideological opposition, and frankly, it seems like more of them are on the American side than on the Iranian side right now. But it was so important for the president not to listen to those voices. If he had succumbed to that type of conventional wisdom, we would not have been seeing this agreement today. It's precisely because he had the courage to think beyond that and recognize that people can change, and that we should not assume that we know the interest of another side that we frankly know so little about because there's been no diplomatic relations for 35 years.
And in his taking that approach, what effect do you think that could have in Iran?
Oh, I think this is going to be decisive. I mean, if this is a successful deal, this is going to help define who decides the direction of Iran for the next generation. It will be the first time that the moderates in Iran will have scored a major victory, and the most important victory. And I don't know if you've seen the images of the Iranian lead negotiator, Foreign Minister Zarif, returning to Tehran. People have been dancing in the streets, singing and celebrating, and greeting him, incidentally, with green slogans, the very same slogans that they chanted 5-6 years ago during the 2009 elections, which I think is an indication that in many ways Rouhani's election was the ultimate revenge of the Green movement. They essentially won at the end.
But Zarif himself is an interesting personality. How important were the personalities in this, just on a human level?
Critical. Zarif is a master diplomat, and so is John Kerry, and they hit it off and they developed a very strong relationship. And diplomacy truly is an art, and it's an underappreciated art. These are the things that truly make history move forward in a way that actually raises the consciousness of humanity. I'm not sure I'm 100% correct on this, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if this is the first major international conflict in a very long time that was resolved through diplomacy without first going to war. Many other conflicts have been resolved at the end of it with the diplomatic phase, but it started off with a military confrontation. This one avoided it altogether. And that's not just an achievement for diplomacy, it's an achievement for humanity.
If we actually look at then the critics who say this will not hold, Iran will not keep up its end of the deal, and this will not hold in Congress.
Well, the critics have been wrong on everything so far. Iran would not negotiate. Iran would never live up to its end of the bargain in the interim deal. The Iranians would ideologically be opposed to even talking to the U.S. Everything they've said has actually not only been wrong, it's been clearly designed to make sure that no one dared to even try diplomacy in the first place. And the second point on this, before addressing your specific question, I think it's also important to keep in mind that the critics are a significant minority. They may be very loud, and they may have a very big platform, much thanks to Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel, but they are in a very small minority. The entire world wanted this deal. P5+1 are Britain, the UK, France, Germany, Russia, China, and the United States. Those are the greatest powers in the world right now. Most of them US allies, and some of them, frankly, US rivals. But on this specific issue, they all came together. That is much, much bigger than any opposition coming from Israel or any opposition coming from Saudi Arabia. Having said all of that, of course, we still have to be cautious. We have to make sure that all of the verifications measures are in place to make sure that no side cheats on this. But this idea that this is dead on arrival has been proven flat wrong.
Do you think, though, there's a spirit of good faith now that didn't exist before, even a few years ago?
I think there's a personal rapport that has been developed, and there's a knowledge that there is a direct channel of communication that is tremendously valuable, and people are eager to use it. And once this deal finally is secured, I think it will be very interesting to see how much dialogue there will be between the United States and Iran on regional matters, on Syria, on Yemen, on Iraq, on Afghanistan, because both sides truly can take a tremendous advantage of by simply being able to talk to the other side.
What do you think this means for the Iranian people?
This means that they will be able to reconnect with the rest of the world, that the pariah status will have been taken off of them, that they will be able to travel, that they will be able to trade, that they will be able to be part of the global community, something that they've been yearning, particularly the young people in Iran, for quite some time. And they did so without losing. It's very important to keep in mind, both sides won at this. The Iranians kept their dignity. This is frankly the first time in Iranian history since 1813 in which they've had a major conflict with the West. There was a negotiation, and they did not end up losing. They won as well. That's a huge achievement for them, which they will take tremendous pride in.
As to the opposition to President Rouhani, how will they react to that, and what have been their interests in this argument?
Well, they're waiting to see exactly how Khamenei will react to this. And so far, he has been supporting of the deal. I think that he is a tremendously suspicious person when it comes to the United States. We have to keep in mind that in this 35-year history of very, very bad chapters between the United States and Iran, the President of the United States read about these chapters when he became president, and he was briefed on it, and he was essentially put up to speed on what had happened in the past. And it's a sad history, of course. But for Khamenei, he lived through each and every one of those chapters. He was there, not as an observer, but as a participant. So the depth of his suspiciousness, the depth of his mistrust is difficult to fathom precisely because he lived through all of these things. He didn't just read about them. So it is a big step for him to agree to something like this, but I'm pretty strongly convinced that Foreign Minister Zarif would never have agreed to what was done in Lausanne unless he had the explicit approval of Khamenei to say yes to this deal.
Trita Parsi there talking about Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Well, joining us now, the Iranian journalist and commentator Potkin Azarmehr and Abdel Beri Atwan, who's the editor-in-chief of the Arab news website Rai Al-Yum. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning.
Potkin, both America and Iran have hardliners to contend with here. Can a final deal be drafted, do you think, by the end of June?
Well, it remains to be seen, but I just want to say that I think Trita Parsi is being very optimistic. I mean, he calls this, the election of Rouhani, the revenge of the Green Movement, but the fact is that the leaders of the Green Movement are still under house arrest. I mean, recently, Karoubi's brother had died. He couldn't even come to the funeral. So to say that the election of Rouhani, who never supported the Green Movement, and really his track record doesn't suggest that he's a moderate or a reformist, is a revenge of the Green Movement, not only is it a bit optimistic, but I think it can only it can also endanger the deal as well by making the hardliners think that this is some sort of like a Green Movement victory. There are mixed reactions to what happens in Lausanne. I mean, there are sections of the population that believe that this will lead to the removal of sanctions and their economic situation will improve. But there's also another section of the population, including many of the civil activists inside Iran, who think that the regime was on its last legs. It's in a desperate situation economically. It doesn't have the money to pay the cash for subsidy payments. It needs huge investment. It's a bit like the Soviet Union before its collapse, and if a deal is made and the sanctions are lifted, it will give a lifeline to the regime. So there are mixed reactions. I mean, many people accuse Trita Parsi of being an Iranian lobbyist, but I'll just suffice to say that I think he was over-optimistic. And already the one problem that's come up, and I'm not talking about the reaction of the hardliners or anything, but there's differences in what both domestic audiences are being told. There are people already in the Iranian media, people from all sides of the spectrum, that are saying, hang on a second, the translation of the statement and the fact sheet that the US State Department put up in Persian is not the same as the English one. So we don't even know what this joint statement. It's a joint statement which is being told differently to the domestic audience.
Okay. But Abdel Beri Atwan, I wondered if, in terms of American policy, there's an element of looking beyond the government to the people. I mean, if America's interests are in a stable Middle East, Iran is a very sophisticated electorate, often more moderate than its leaders. You know, it's highly educated as opposed to what you see potentially in other neighbouring countries in relation to the relationship between the leadership and the local people. Is there any sense here that America is reaching out in a way that it hasn't felt able to in the past, past the actual governing bodies, to the Iranian people with a specific message?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We have noticed that this administration in particular, they are opening some sort of avenues with rogue state. You know, they normalize the relation with Cuba. Now they are turning to Iranian people. They are sending a very positive message that we are not against you. We would like to lift the sanction. We like to take the Iranian people back to the international community and to deal, to actually soften the sanction. All these kinds are positive signs, and definitely the celebration in the street of Tehran indicate that there is a very good response to this American message. What's the alternative for the American? What's the alternative for the Iranian people? The Iranian people were scared because, you know, we noticed that 3 years ago, for example, the whole region was edging toward a war, all-out war. So aircraft carriers, warships, military maneuvers. Now, there is a ray of hope that there will be some sort of peace in the whole region. Definitely there are people who are worried, like the conservative countries in Saudi Arabia and Gulf states, some probably Egypt. Many people talking now about nuclear race. But what's the alternative? War? You know, the area is really suffering from a lot of wars now. So I think it is good to talk to people. It is good to give the Iranian people some assurances that there wouldn't be any war, and I believe President Obama succeeded in that.
Potkin, let me ask you what this means to Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia,
sorry, I'm sorry, Abdel, I was just going to ask Potkin about this and then come back to you.
I don't know, I think you should ask the Saudis there, but I mean, the Saudis see themselves as a regional power, a rival to Iran. And for that reason, you know, they may not be happy about the thing, but if a deal is made, I mean, they just have to live with it. I mean, the Saudis are just as responsible for causing instability and engulfing the region. I don't have any sympathies for them, and if a deal is made which guarantees a peaceful nuclear program in Iran, they just have to live with it.
Okay. Abdul, obviously you have a specific expertise with Saudi relations. What do you think this means to Saudi? And, you know, if you look at the kind of Arab coalition forces they've been putting together around them recently for activities in the Yemen, and even some commentators say they're now reaching out to Pakistan. I mean, what's actually going on there?
Well, actually, the Saudi are extremely worried simply because of the Iranian influence is spreading. Now, Iranian influence is very strong in Iraq, very strong in Syria, very strong in Yemen and in Lebanon. And now the Iranian influence is expanding to reach Yemen, which is the backyard of Saudi Arabia. So the Saudi are extremely worried, trying to formulate some sort of Arab joint forces and to create a Sunni alliance from Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Turkey and Egypt. So in order to counter the Iranian spread of influence. So they are extremely worried. But there are a lot of arguments about this Arab joint forces, whether it is there to protect the regimes or to protect the people, whether these joint Arab forces are going to create stability or instability by a military intervention in Libya, for example, in Yemen, or maybe other parts of the Arab world. So there are a lot of question marks. You know, the people in the region, I mean, the Saudi in particular, they were surprised by this American-Iranian deal. And they feel they were stabbed by the American because Saudi Arabia is, you know, a staunch alliance or ally of the United States for the last, say, 80 years. So suddenly to see that the Americans shifting toward the Iranian and lifting the sanction against them, they are absolutely worried, and we don't know what they are going to do. But they are panicking now. They are trying to intervene by military means in Yemen, talking about wars, banging the drums of wars against Iran and its influence in the region. So I think this is a very, very sensitive transitional period. President Obama is calling for a summit on Camp David, inviting Arab leaders, in particular Saudi Arabia and Gulf region. So we don't know what will happen out of that. How the American president is going to sell this deal with Iran to the Arab world, I don't know.
And Potkin, you wanted to come back on that?
Well, just 2 points about the what Barry is saying. First of all, I don't think it's a deal. I mean, I don't think any of the two sides are calling this a deal. I don't believe anyone's even signed anything, so we can't call it a deal yet. And also, again, with regards to Barry's optimism about the peace breaking out and the two countries having normal relations, how do you explain the chance of death to US in the Friday prayers yesterday, immediately after the negotiations in Lausanne ended, and the faithful in the Friday prayers again were asked to chant death to the US. I think until we have this sort of behaviour, we can't really be that optimistic about peace breaking out in the region and Iran having normal relationship with the rest of the world.
But you know, some of this is however, you know, unfortunate to put it no higher. This is for a domestic audience with the hardliners, you know, presumably the Ayatollah, you know, the Supreme Leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, trying to, you know, say not everything's going to change and appeasement to the hardliners. But is there not, do you have no sense, Potkin, of a momentum here that actually goes beyond this? Whatever they say in an immediate reaction, however they say, we want 14 translations because we're not happy, it's what we've got in Persian. All of this, do you have any sense at all that underneath this there is now a momentum and a change?
The momentum that I'm optimistic about is the demographic change in Iran. The fact that if you speak to the vast majority of Iranian, it's not the same language as in 1979. That revolutionary, anti-imperialist language that when I was in Iran, people were saying. I mean, that has definitely changed. People have come to realise that these are just empty slogans, and their living conditions is not going to improve by adopting an isolationist policy, and that needs to have a good relationship with the rest of the world. But there are underlying causes of Iran's melee which doesn't make me optimistic. I mean, the economy being in the hands of the Revolutionary Guards. I mean, sanctions are not the only reason for the failure of Iran's economy. I've spoken to many economists inside Iran, and they're saying that you could say that the sanctions maybe accelerated, for example, the recession that Iran went to, but the underlying causes of Iran's economy are much deeper, and they're not just going to go away if sanctions are lifted. I think that two areas where the 1979 revolution failed miserably. One was the economy, and the other is the foreign policy. The foreign policy of the Iranian regime is just a disaster for not just the Iranians, but everyone in the region.
We have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for that. Potkin Azarmehr and Abdel Beri